Richard, are you with us? I know you are because we've been chatting away in the background.
I am.
Hi, Richard. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it's really good, and it's a privilege to come along and talk to you this evening, and everybody that's chipped in to listen to me as well.
Yeah,
thank you for
brilliant.
that.
Pleasure. Before we get to kind of look at some of your images, I always like to get to know the man behind the camera first and things, really, because, you know, it's great to take a pretty picture, but it's kind of knowing how it all came about, isn't it? You know, so we're going to talk about technique tonight. We'll talk about kind of the different shots and everything else with it. But what's your background? Where did the passion photography first start for you?
I guess it was early on that I decided that I was good at art. My dad showed us loads of slides as a kid, and he gave me this camera, this Zeiss Icon, when I was 11, and I picked it up. He gave me a roll of film, and it basically started from there. I remember taking a photograph of something that was a blue flash, and a school teacher said to me, he says, "Wow, that's fantastic. What is it?" I said, "Oh, it's a kingfisher." Well, it wasn't. It was just a mark on the film. And he thought, so he sort of took me under his wing and said, "Look, you know, there's space here to do a bit of a darkroom stuff," and that. And it went from there, really. You know, I'm not a brainsy people. I'm not, is it academic? I'm very visual and hands-on. And even in my day job, you know, I make false teeth for a living. And it's artistic, and it's the artistic flair that I like, but recording it as well. So that's where it stemmed from, really. And I've loved it for the last 50 odd years.
Brilliant. And what brought you into kind of specializing more into the fine art, nude and model photography and things, really? How did that all kind of come about?
I guess that I'd done the landscapes, I'd joined the camera club, I'd done, you know, the nature things and every little thing like that. And then I started a bit of portraiture. And then there was a guy that came to our club, and he was doing glamour photography probably 35, 40 years ago. And there was a pretty girl around the corner from me. And I thought, oh, I'm going to ask her, and I'll see if I can't take some photographs. And at the time, I was looking at the Yerbre's stuff, Trevor and Faye Yerbre's stuff. And I thought, oh, I'll get one of these Victorian 90s. My dad's a fisherman. I can go to one of his fishing lakes, and I'll get this girl to wear this dress. So I asked her, and she said, yeah, my mum will bring me. I said, well, that's good. So mum came along, and I took this shot of a girl tipping her toe in water, and it started from there, really. And then I thought, hang on a minute, I like this. It's good. And I've got a ready-made outdoor studio. And as I say, the sort of just moved on from there. I never used it. The biggest disappointment for me was I never used a professional model. So I was looking at photography books and things like that of the poses, and I'd sketch out the poses that the girls had to do. And I think my fellowship panel, when I did that, I think probably 75% of those models are on the tiptoes. And once you start using a professional model, you see the transition of a model that goes onto tiptoes. Gives you a completely different sort of take on an image, really. So that got me started more than anything else. And that was around about. Sorry.
You touched on fellowship there. When and what was that on? So I think you got it with the Royal Photographic, didn't you, in UK?
Yeah. It was a photographer that I did a lot of landscape stuff with, and photographing trains, as you do in camera clubs. And he says, "Oh, I'm going for my licensure." And I said, "Oh, you buy those things, don't you?" And we had a bit of a sort of pulling the leg on that. Anyway, he got it, and I thought, well, I'm not having him get that. So I got mine as well. And then I thought, oh, hang on a minute, I like this. I'm in my darkroom 2 days a week. So I'll print myself some prints. I went for an associate, got my associate in portraiture. And then I thought, and then when I did my associate, they said to me, if you'd have had another 5 images with you today, would you give me your fellowship? Well, my head was that big when I walked out that door. I thought, I'll quickly whip 5 images off, put them together for a fellowship. 6 months later, put in for my fellowship, failed. And I'm thinking, how does that happen? But then, and it was then, Mark, that I started to learn about light. And then 3 years later, I got my fellowship. I think I was the youngest person to get it, at 36 in portraiture and figure study there. So yeah, so just a bit of fun. It was almost like a challenge to me. And once I got my teeth into something, that was it. But it took me. I was printing in a darkroom as well, so the sort of degree that I went to, I wouldn't spot anything if you're used to darkroom techniques, which some of your viewers may be or maybe not. But it took me 400 hours to print 20 prints. So yeah. So
I hope it was a passion for you.
Yeah, it was a long ride. It was 4 years of, but I knew what I wanted to do, and that was my goal. And then from there, it opened doors to other things for me.
Very good. And you talked about Camera Club as well. Are you still a member of a Camera Club now? Are you still you're active in club?
Yeah, I've been to a few Camera Clubs. I've been sort of not kicked out of them for showing my images and talking about models and things and showing different types of image. 1 or 2 clubs don't let me back in. And then we're just going through the process at the moment at one certain club where they don't want to show my nude images, which to me are art, but they don't see it like that. But so yeah, Camera Clubs are, I've been in 3 or 4 Camera Clubs, and the big thing for me is it's helping people now that I think I've attained quite a good standard. It's helping other people learn more about the skills of cameras and lighting and such, and basically talking to models what you can get out of somebody. But the most important thing to me is how light works. And not many people, they think they put a studio light up, one at one side and one at the other, and that's that model lit. It's not. Or you take them outside. We can't photograph here, it's too sunny. Well, you take somebody into the shade and use a reflector. It's these little things, and I get a massive amount of achievement from helping other people.
Brilliant.
I think I've done that.
So before we get to the first image, what does fine art nude photography mean to you? I know the first image we're going to be seeing isn't one of the fine art nudes, but what does fine art nude photography mean to you in a personal level?
To me, it's taking a female body or a male body. I've only done 2 males, and I'll never photograph a male again. But it's a fine balance between the architecture that I put them in, and also that model showing her body and me lighting it so it shows her body in a place of beauty, really, just to sort of give. It's a lot of people say, why do you do art nude photography? It's because I like looking at a female form. But my female form, it's very rare that I photograph close up to models. A lot of mine are in grand buildings, or in parks or whatever, because I like the architectural element, but I also like the female form in that architectural element. And that's, to me, is my art nude. That's my cut on art nude, which I love.
Very good. So before we start to talk about the first image, as I said, it's not the art nude. We're going to get into that in a minute. But who have been your biggest artistic influences, either side, inside photography, outside photography, fine art, nude, portraiture? It doesn't matter. Who's been the biggest influence for you, or who are the biggest influences for you?
Litchfield. Litchfield, without a shadow of a doubt.
So we're on about Lord Litchfield, the kind of the glamour photographer of the 80s and so on with it, yes?
Yeah, Unipark calendars, things like that. Trevor and Faye, the Yerburys.
Fine art Scottish nude photographers, yep.
Yeah, Parkinson.
Yeah,
Norman Parkinson, Earl, and even Karsh as well, going back. But I would say the biggest influence for me has been Patrick Litchfield.
Okay.
To sort of take his slant on how he portrayed a female form in a big landscape. That's what I like. You know, that was me really. And then fine tuning some of that. I was lucky enough. I didn't really get into art nude photography itself, art nude, until probably 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And my wife paid for me to go on an art nude day up to Scotland to photograph with the Yerbris. And it was from there that I'd already been following them for 20 years in what they were doing. So and that to me was the sort of start of, well, I can photograph. You know, I've got more confidence now. I was very shy younger on, and I wouldn't approach a female or whatever. But then going onto Purple Port and looking at the models that you've got there, taking a lot of help from other photographers. A guy I get on really well with, Trebor Images on Purple Port. We generally have a chat once a week there. He's a superb photographer. It's Bob, but it's those sort of images and those sort of people that have helped me along and sort of carved a path to where I want to be in my photography. And now people look at my photography and say, well, how can I do this? Which is nice.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first image then. So our ballerina in red.
Yeah.
What's this image all about? What's the story behind it?
So the story behind it is that, as we'll probably find out later on, I do an awful lot for cancer research with my images. And I work with now mainly ballet dancers or fine art models, nude models. This is Erica Mulkern. She's a dancer, teacher, model. She's extraordinary. She's just a joy to work with. And I had an idea that I wanted to create something like a poppy. And I was lucky enough to contact her. It's a hotel sort of wedding venue just the other side of York called Thicket Priory. And to hire the place for the day, it's £17,000 for a day because they hire it out as a big wedding venue. Everything's paid for. And I asked the guy there, would I be able to come along? Wrote him an email. Put him in the email. In my website, it tells me a little bit, or told him a little bit about what I do my photography for. And he invited me along and said, yes, you can do, you just can't do art nude. So I thought, right, well, I'll take a ballerina with me. And this was the shot that I did. It's probably one of the few shots that I've got that's got an actual flash on it. So I've got a flash coming through a doorway on the right-hand side, illuminating. Erica's gone up onto point, and then she's fluffed out a tutu, the red bit, to make it look like a poppy. And I've just basically carved down, well, not carved down, I've darkened the sides and the background just to highlight her really on the black and white checkers. And that was the shot for me. The hardest thing was when she tips forward, sometimes the dress flew back, and then I needed her fingers within that red of the tutu. And I'm not a machine gun photographer. I tend to probably take, all I want is one shot. I was brought up on a cheap Hasselblad, commonly known as Branica. And every shot you take is a shot that's got, when you're on roll film and you've only got 12 shots, you've got to make every shot count. So I'd rather perfect or look to see what I've got in the viewfinder to make sure it's right than just press a button, take 1,000 shots, get it home on the computer and spend 3 days looking to try and find the shot that I want. So I think we did 3 takes of this. That was it, 3rd shot in. And then once I've got the shot, I just move on. I don't try and perfect it any more than my visual scene at that time, really.
Very good. So are you a fan of flash, or do you prefer daylight? Where's your kind of preference?
My balance is if I'm in a studio, I know my way around a studio. That's not a problem. but to me, it's daylight. I don't use a flash outdoors, and that's only because I like to see where the light is, and I don't think I've got enough control using flash outside. And I've worked with, photographers that do. John Gardner, experienced photographer, great guy. I've been out with him, and he puts a flash up and he says, "Oh, we'll use this and we'll fill it in a bit," and that's fine. And I've got some good shots with him. But mainly, I just like to use daylight, see where the light is, and use that light. And if I've got to use, 64,000 ISO, I use 64 ISO or 64,000 ISO. The ISO, the grain, or with the tools that we've got nowadays, grain's not so much of a problem. But I would rather use that and me be in control of what I can see, rather than popping a flash off in the background or whatever to illuminate something. My brain can't compute to when it gets to electronic things. That's me. I'm simple. I look at something. If the light's there, it's there, and if it's not, it isn't.
So if because you've been shooting for so long,
yeah.
How was the transition from analog to digital for you? Did you find it easy or frustrating? Because so many photographers who were really good analog photographers, it took them quite a big relearning to kind of really turn out the same thing with digital. Did you have issues at all, or were you okay?
6 years.
Oh my gosh.
I stopped in 2004 once I got the fellowship, and I said, right, that's it. And I got divorced in the meantime, and my new wife then, or my new partner then, I didn't need a reason on a Saturday and Sunday to go out and get rid of the old wife because I got a new wife. So I stopped doing weddings, and that was the only reason I did weddings, just to get away from my wife, which taught me a lot, which taught me a great deal. But so once I got my fellowship and I had a new life, it was probably about 6 years, about 2010. 2011 before I picked up a digital camera and started again, basically. A lot of people thought I'd died because I was quite vocal around the camera clubs for a long while. But yeah, and I went from an analog to a digital camera, and it's the computer side that threw me. It was the Photoshop, the Lightroom that I didn't understand. Put me in a dark room, give me some dodge and burn tools, and I was fine. But I really do struggle, and I mean that I'm not sort of trying to spin your yarn or anything like that. But it was only last year that I learned how to do layers. But hey, that's I'd rather try and get it right in the camera than spend a day and a half, trying to alter something. And I'm not one of these gimmick photographers, where you've got a Lancaster bomber coming in from one side and you've got a boat with a moon and stuff like that. It's if I can't sort my image out within sort of 15 minutes of putting it on a computer, then I've failed, really. I photographed a model not so long back. And she'd had 4 hours with another photographer, and then she had 4 hours with me. And she said, the photographer before you, she said he managed to take 1,600 photographs in the 4 hours. I said, oh, fantastic. She said, how many have you got to? I said, well, I've got to 96 in 4 hours. I said, but out of those 96, I think 85 of them will be all right. So, yeah, it's just the way I work. And if you've come from analog, especially on medium format, it just slows your brain down, and especially when you look for light, and which I do. So I don't know, being a Yorkshireman, I'm probably just tight, but realise that digital, you don't have to have that tightness about your film, but it's just carried on through me.
I'm the son of a Yorkshireman, and I'm a Welshman, right, which makes me the tightest person on the planet. To be honest, kind of thing with it, but that's a whole different kind of discussion. Like last question before we move on. On your website, you mention about skill, foresight, and fortune in your work. Can you break down each of these elements and how it plays a role for you?
Fortune, yeah, I'm fortunate enough to sort of capture an image if it does happen. You know, sometimes you'll see an image, and then just by moving a hand or something like that, it can make the image a whole lot better. I know that works. That works for me. You know, I have a plan of what I'm going to shoot on an image or on a certain day with a model, and then you get there, you've got your drawing in front of you, everything's set up, and then you'll probably get a burst of light from somewhere else, and that light will catch across a face or whatever, and you'll just change your angle and think, wow, that's the shot. That's my fortune. It's arrived. You know, that's how it comes, really. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to our second image, but our first art nude as such, really.
Yeah.
Is this kind of your perfect location with your perfect model, your perfect image? How would you explain this image?
This to me is taking what I like out of within an environment and putting a model there that's experienced, yeah, and using the light that's coming through. This is a place called Cathedral Caves in Little Langdale. I'd seen the shot in black and white, and I thought I'll have to Google that, search it. And then I thought, right, I'm in Cumbria. I live in York, so that's an hour away. And I thought, I need a model, an art nude model. So then what I did, I put a search in onto Purple Port to see what I've got. And I came up with Owen Luna. I don't know, she's Welsh. I don't know if that's a correct thing, but anyway. So we agreed to do this shoot, and obviously it's a public place, so anybody can go. So I said to her, we're in the middle of summer. It was in June. I said, if you can get to me in Keswick, I'll stop overnight. Meet me at 4 o'clock, 4:30. We'll drive to this place, and then we'll do 4 hours photography. Got to the place, the water was just lovely and still. There's like a little pond in there, and it is massive. You probably look up and it's 150, 200 foot up inside, you know, and it's got all the textures. And to me, I like it's not the marriage, it's like the two opposites. You've got the smooth, delicate, you know, porcelain-like skin of an art nude model, and then you look behind you and you've got the grittiness of the stone and the lichen and all the colours. And to me, that's how an image for me works. And I went around the other side, got a reflection as well. We've got the light coming in through a little hole on the left-hand side, perfectly illuminated. I'm very, very happy. And she went through a series of poses in this position. The first position that I had her stood on a rock just to the left-hand side, and it didn't seem to work. It looked like she was coming out of the water, and that's not the image that I wanted. And it's just finding a sort of a dark patch behind her, so she's sort of thrown forward, more illuminated, really. We were there probably, 3 hours, 3.5 hours before somebody else came. And I've got some, you know, beautiful shots at the entrance of the cave, you know, lovely light. But she's what I would consider to be a top-end model. And that makes a massive difference to me, Mark, now. You know, she's on the tiptoes. Now, the first model I ever photographed, if I'd taken there, she'd have been flat-footed. But it's working with professionals. I can't praise the professionals enough. And not everybody wants to, you know, I'm there in probably thermals, and she's there doing what she can. I'm very courteous to all my models. You know, as soon as I've finished a shot, I'll wrap them up, make sure they're warm, feed them, make sure they've, you know, they take plenty of breaks. I'm not one of these photographers or do that. I'm not there to extract as much as I can out of my 4 hours time with them. All I'm there to do is I've got an image in my head and a vision. Once I've got that, I can move on because
Are
I've already gone. Sorry.
you worried about what the viewer of the final image, what am I trying to say? So, you know, do you hope that the viewers take away from the images something beyond the aesthetics as such? Are you bothered about that? Are you shooting it purely for you, and it's like you're not worried about what others think about the photograph? How does it work with you?
If I can digress and go back to the camera club times,
Yeah.
and I was a young lad, and I put the chairs out for the Ripon Photographic Society. I put the chairs out for the first year. Then I got onto the committee, and I became the competition secretary. And I'd pick I would pick a judge on the style of what he liked, and then I'd go out take photographs to the style that he liked to win competitions. And after about 4 years of winning all these competitions, I thought, what am I doing this for? Why don't I start taking photographs for myself, what I like? And then if somebody else likes them, it's a bonus. So I don't take pictures for other people. I take pictures for myself that I like. If other people like them, it's a bonus. If they don't like them, that's purely up to them, you know. But I try and build as much aesthetic of what I feel inside, and I'm very passionate about what I do, into an image. And the best thing for me is that Claire, my wife, she's very good at looking at stuff. So she'll look at one of my images, and I'll look at an image, I'll turn it upside down, look in all four corners, see what distracts. Then Claire will come and she says, oh, I don't like that white bit there, or that doesn't join up. And then I have to alter it.
Yeah.
But no, I take images for me, and if other people like them, that's a massive bonus. So.
Very good. Okay, so our next image.
Yeah, the lovely Miss C. And this was a lot of the models that we just go back to the last model. I contacted her and she said, I thought you'd never pick the phone up and want to work with me. I said, you could have just messaged me and said, will you work with me? But I don't know, it is difficult. So about a year ago, I contacted this model, and it's at Basfordhurst Cottage. I think they call it a new name now. It's got photo and film location. Fantastic. And I said to her, I said, right, I said, what have you got in the house? So we looked around the house. She said, well, what are the old buildings outside? I said, can I have a look in there? And she said, yeah, come and have a look. So I went in there. I said, anybody shot in here before? She said, no. I said, well, we will. What, in here? And that was it. It was just muted light coming through there. She's an art nude model. I've got one prop, and that's my 1920s Victorian 90 that she's got wrapped around her waist. And then she just pulls some shapes, and it's been very, very successful. But it's been successful because of the light that was coming through there, just soft, which is great to use. And I try and, if you look at the shape of a face, it's sort of her arms are in the right position to sort of see where the curvature of a face is, or what stands out, her lips and her nose, if you go to detail. I make sure that when I take my images that they're going to be right. It's like little things that a lot of people wouldn't think of. Like if you look at her right knee is just this side of that window frame, because I know that if it bleeds into that window frame, then I've got a clash. It's not pulling her out of the image. It's like the wall behind a right arm. A right arm's dark and the wall behind it is light. And that's because I've looked to see where things are. And I think that's important. It's important to me because to me, it's the lightest part of an image that people always look to. And that's why 95% or a good percentage of my images will be dark around the outside, you know, with interest.
And is that the advice you'd give to your younger self if you were beginning again?
I think the advice to my younger self, if I was beginning again, was don't just go with one style of photography. Go with another photographer that can give you a different idea. I was channeled down one sort of straight straight pattern photography, and I loved his work, and it was Stu Williamson, and everything was like very white and porcelain. And it wasn't until I failed my fellowship that one of the guys said to me, look, you need to use light creatively. And by using that light and dark, that is what I work on. Yeah, and I wouldn't tell anybody how to take a photograph, because I think it's important that you have to find your own niche. You know, I once remember somebody saying to me, don't darken the outside. Every image of yours is darkened around the outside. But it's darkened around the outside because that's how I like to present it. You know, we each to our own, basically. And I would never point or say that's right or that's wrong. I could only say, this is how I do it. Give it a try. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, pick something else. You know, we're all, I would say, yes, we all want people to look at our images and go, wow, but it doesn't work like that. You know, we can't sort of, well, I do, I take images for me, but yes, it's lovely when other people appreciate what you've done, but it's not a necessity for me. I mean,
But if you're saying about don't follow one photographer, you know, one theme or whatever it be, and that, in fact, I'm not sure if you've ever been into martial arts, but in fact, the sensei, when you're kind of nearing your black belt stage, they actually actively encourage you to go and train elsewhere, so that you start to formulate your own kind of way, as it were, you know. And this is, it's the same as all art, isn't it, really? You know, an artist would go and train with an artist that they admire and they want to be like, but then it, to some extent, that's the easy part. It's then actually when you're trying to find your own way, actually kind of develop it and things, really. But I think that's good advice that you've given there. Okay, so our next image is the nude in the kind of the archway.
Yeah, this is, how can I say it? It's a place I played as a kid. It's an abbey not far from Ripon, and I go and I make sure that nobody's about when I take the images. One of the reasons I can't sell them is because I don't want to be in court. So none of my images I make money from, and they're purely for me.
Yeah.
So, but you've got like a little annex, you've got an old floor, you've got light coming through the window, and I just love the light just coming across the top of a body. Somebody said to me, do you not have an Instagram on your camera? And I said, I do. He said, well, you've got no details in your highlights. And I said, fine. And I said to this photographer, I said, do me a favor. I said, just come outside with me, will you? So I took him outside and I said, look up at the sun for me. He said, well, no, it's too bright. I said, well, if you look up at the sun, I said, have you got any detail there? He said, no, because it's too bright. I said, well, there you go then. So does a bright light need to have highlights? You know, does it need to have any sort of depth in it? No, to me, it's just a white light. Yeah, it would be great if you could, you know, have a dynamic range that would cover that, but you don't. So that doesn't put me off, and it just highlights how I see an image. To me, an image is what I can see visually. If it's got, you know, blown out highlights, it's got blown out highlights. You know, if there's no detail in blacks, it's got no details in the blacks. Yeah, it'd be lovely to have an Ansel Adams image for everything, but then an Ansel Adams image wouldn't have the same sort of impact to me as this image has, purely because of what it is.
Is the location the most important thing?
I would say I look for, to me, a location is probably a good 85%. 85% location, 10% model, 5% photography craft. Because I mean, the images that we've picked out, I mean, I've got a lot of images. I've changed them 20 times since I sent them to you. you try to narrow me down to 8 images, we could go on for the next 20 years and pull out every image. But a lot of mine are against big buildings and places where I've been privileged to go to and work in. But yeah, a big part of what I do is from a location. You know, when I see a model that I like working with, somebody's just contacted me really just recently. So the first thing I do is I look at all the sort of English heritage, top hotels, anything like that, that'll give me the sort of, again, going back to this beautiful porcelain skin against, you know, the ruggedness of whether it be, you know, rocks or buildings or whatever. That's what I like to feel. I think for me, a lot of that is putting a female into a location, and I say female because I tend not to photograph men, and it's from that point of view that I really love what I do. It's the hunt of the location, then finding the model to go into that location, or if a model rings up and says, "Oh, would you photograph me?" or there.
Very good. So let's talk technical equipment wise and everything else. What are you shooting at present with? What's your preferred lens choice and etc.? What are you doing?
I shoot everything at 2.8. I use a Fuji X-T5, which I've had probably about six months.
Okay.
I tried a Hasselblad. Is it the XD2? I took it out on test. They were happy to give me. I had an XT2 Fuji at the time. Took the Hasselblad out and took it back after 4 hours and said, "You can keep it." Got back to my Fuji, which I absolutely hated because I've come from a Canon. So now this was taken on an XT2. The lenses, I have 3 lenses now. I have a 16 to 55, I have a 100 to 400, and I have a 40 to 150, I think it is. And I shoot everything at the lowest I can, which is 2.8. And that equipment-wise, that's it. You don't need any more than that. But the only other lens I have bought is it was some obscure Japanese lens that somebody said, "Oh, it's got a really good depth of field on it," and it goes down to 0.9 of an f-stop. Oh. And I can photograph. I photographed somebody sideways. Photographed a model sideways on. You can't breathe. It's manual focus. You can't breathe while you're using it, and you can get it down to 2 strands of an eyelash. It's phenomenal, and that was about 140 quid. But camera equipment wise, it's I think it was I'm not sure whether it was Ansel Adams that said the most important camera equipment you'll ever have is 12 inches behind the camera, and that's your eyes. Yeah, that's how I look at it. So to me, it's just a way of capturing a box.
Very good. Let's talk about this image.
I absolutely love it. This model now isn't modeling anymore. This is in the Grand Hotel in York, which is a 1920s building. It was where the railway chairman used to have his board. Now it's a beautiful hotel. I've been working with the hotel for the last 10 years. They let me go there whenever I need to, and the place is free for me to use. And they sponsor me as much for my cancer research charity. They allow me to go there, take the images I take, which I then produce into lectures. A lovely parquet flooring. On the other side, where she's looking out, I call this view on the world. Where she's looking out, it's onto the bar walls in York. And the best thing about this is that the tourists can see straight into this window, so they actually get a frontal view. I only get the back view. Yeah, it's great, and as you can see, I've toned it. I tend not to worry about tones in my images. I try to I desaturate a lot of my images, and people say, oh, well, those skin tones aren't right or whatever. And I say to them, I'm not here to produce a skin tone that's perfect. What I'm here to do is make a visual impression for you to view. And if you like it, you like it. But there's little things in this that make a difference to me. It's like the hands on the inside of the curtains. If you notice that the lights above, the little center dome, the furthest, well, the closest one, is within the next one down. It doesn't protrude. Just little things to me that make a big difference in my photography, really.
And when you're taking the exposure for this image, can you talk people through how you would actually because if you shoot this on the back of the camera and you look at it, a lot of people would look, it's too dark, isn't it? They would instantly think of it, and they'd open up and everything else with it. So for you, how would you explain to them what you're trying to achieve as far as the exposure is concerned?
What I'm trying to achieve here is I'm trying to get a little bit of depth into the blacks if I can. Yeah, shooting at that window, she'd be in complete silhouette. So I'd shoot it at 2.8. Yeah, I'm probably on 200 ISO. But then what I do is I compensate it. I can plus or minus, 5 stops compensation, and that's what I'll do to try and get that light balance a little bit better. But I'll still be shooting it at 2.8, and then when I get it back onto my computer, it would just be black and white, and then I just try and put some tones back in it very crudely. This is, before I learn to do layers, but I don't want to spend a lot of time there. I shoot a lot of stuff against windows because I like it, because I know how to control it with my compensation. So that works for me.
Very good. And what's your typical kind of, if there can be one, creative process from the concept idea to the execution? We started off with the nudes, where we were in that beautiful kind of rock area with the kind of pool, and then we just saw the kind of the hotel there. Is that, like I said, is the location the most important thing for you? Is that where the creative process starts for you?
Yes, or an idea. So I've done a few shoots with Tabitha Bedell, which, if you've got photographers out there that are listening in, if to get the variation of models, dancers, and the creativity that Tabitha puts into her shoots, I've been on a few of those now, which just set you up completely in a different stratosphere, really. I can't praise the woman highly enough for what she's done to the photography industry to bring it more to the people that can't get out to these big venues or whatever. So she's brilliant. So working with her, I like to look at what studio days we've got, and I'll pick a studio day for a model. So I worked with this model. This is Amelia Kate, and I worked with her in a studio for a couple of hours, and I thought, I like her. She's nice, she's pretty, got a couple of good shots. Contacted her. She was highly delighted with the first lot of shots. She said, could we do another shoot? I said, yeah. I said, what? She said, would you, she's not an art nude model, so she'll do concealed. Yeah. She said, but I wouldn't mind. I've seen the shot that you've done with pearls, one string of pearls. She said, it'd be nice if we could get a couple of strands of pearls. So what I did was I went to a car boot sale for about 4 to 5 months. I knew what I wanted to do, and I picked up 28 strands of pearls. And that's when I got a concept of, I want something like a boudoir shoot. Not that I'm into boudoir stuff at all. Picked a studio, which is Aurora Studio, which is absolutely, it's just a great location for a studio. The studio itself is immense. Emily that runs it, she's a joy to work with, and she built this set, and this is constant lighting. We draped the pearls on Amelia, and then I just went to work and started photographing her, really. And that was it. Probably did 20 shots of this. And the shot that she wanted isn't the shot that you're seeing there, but on my purple port on my website, you'll see it. And the first time I shot Amelia, she was in a leotard. And she said, "Oh, do you think you could take a shot of my bum?" Well, I tend to photograph models from down below because all models like really long legs. And I'd taken this shot using the light, using my intelligence of where to place the light. I sent this shot to Amelia. She says, "Oh my God," she says, I won't do naked, but I would do naked if you could get my bum to look like that in a naked shot." So this is the studio that we used to recreate that shot for her. It wasn't for me, but she's highly delighted with it. But this was my concept with all the pearls.
How important is spontaneity for you in shoots?
It means a lot to me, yeah, and it all depends with what models you work with. And the story behind this model, I'll be quick about this, is that somebody said to this model, the Kola Kaza hoop, "You need to photograph with Richard Egan." So she contacted me, did Kaza. She sent me a message, purple port. "Hi, my name's Kaza. I need to shoot with you." So I sent her a quick email back. I said, I generally don't photograph females with tattoos, and I don't photograph females with piercings. And she's got 7 piercings and about 6 or 7 tattoos, big tattoos. I got a message back. The message was, "You need to get out of your comfort zone." And that was like a red rag to a bull. I contacted her back. I said, "We'll shoot this weekend." So I shot her for 2 hours, and then I said, "Right, we need to go somewhere else." So we actually went to Hull, and this is a factory. It's called the Lloyd Line, and it's just full of graffiti on 5 floors, about the size of a football stadium. We got to the top floor, and she didn't do art nude, but she did with me. And I said, "Look, this is what the sort of thing I want." And I went for rubber tights and stockings, suspender belt, and that was just something completely off the wall for me. But it's the light mark that worked for me. You had these very tiny windows, and it was black behind, so that already got me halfway to where I wanted to be. And then with her facial features and just very small movements, so we'll get into a position where she'll model, and I'll say, "That's brilliant, but just stay like that. Don't move any part of your body." I said, "All I want you to move is your head." And then I would see where the light was on her head until she got the light in the perfect place. Then I'd click the button, and then we'd move on. Then she could move again.
Okay.
But she's an absolute joy.
So with this image in mind here, what are the key elements that separate a powerful fine art nude image from just nude photography? What's the difference?
I think it's the visual appeal to show somebody's body in not just overlit, but actually use the light to bring in the curvature and how their stature is, whether it's, they've got a good rib cage, whether they've got, nice shaped boobs, facial expressions, whether they're toned or not. That to me is bringing those elements into fine art, your image, rather than just photograph a girl naked against a white background. That's not me. I want that fine art. Yeah, there are fine art photographers out there, and they'll just take a photograph of body against a white background. But to me, this is my interpretation of it. I need it to be in a building.
But okay, right, now there you go. Because what I was going to say, all you described a minute ago was just a difference in body shapes. What I was on about was the key elements that separate a powerful fine art image from just a nude image. Because what you explained to begin with, where you're just on about body shape, to me, just that was about nude photography. When we start to bring in the world of fine art, what is that element? I mean, for me, I can see it straight away. It's the lighting. It's the
It's the
location that you're choosing
Yeah.
together. It's the animation. I get all that, but I needed
Yeah.
you to explain that, because if you don't, you're photographing just a nude.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm photographing a bit. I'm photographing a building. It just happens that I've got a nude model there, and the light's in the right place, and that's highlighting that. And then you switch from having that beautiful derelict building to something else. You're then building that into your model. And that, to me, that's how my stuff works. It's got to be a location, and then you bring the model in, and then the model is what you're looking at, but it's got a surrounding around it from the rest of the building.
Okay, so this is our last image of the night. Let's talk about this image.
Yeah. This was Bob Trebor Images. He said you need to photograph Beth Kate Taylor. So I arranged to have a meeting with her. I've got a place down in the Cotswolds. She lives at Leamington Spa. We stopped for a coffee. I give her some ideas. She said, yeah, I'm up for that. So I met her one morning. Bob actually came with me to order a reflector. I've wrecked all over Royal Leamington Spa. This is where I came up to. I looked at the shadows, where the shadows would be falling. I looked at her body shape and I thought, right, she'll fit into there. So we went there. This was our second location. She's absolutely fantastic ballerina. She's just great at posing. And I saw this is right at the front, right in the centre of Royal Leamington Spa. It's their baths, royal baths. There's about, I don't know, 12 pillars going down, but it's only about 10, 15 feet away from the road. And this is probably 6:30 in the morning. You've got to be a bit careful. But what was funny about this is a roundabout not far from here, and a scaffolding lorry came past with 3 guys in. Well, the scaffolding lorry went round the roundabout that many times I thought it was the merry-go-round. And they were whistling and jeering. She said, she said, are you all right shooting? She said, I'm absolutely fine shooting, because she's just used to shooting outside. So she went up in point, and to start off with, what happened was I got a foot that she's stood on, the main sort of holding her up, was just outside of that shadow. And when I moved her across, I thought, oh my God, I can't have her there because it doesn't balance, because I wanted a dark end at this right-hand side for a stop. But I also wanted the left-hand side shadowing of it's a plant that's hanging from the ceiling. And I thought, well, if I can marry those two up, I'll move her further back. I'll arch her back and I'll get it nearly resting onto the other the shadow of the wall, and keep her torso in the middle. And that's what we did. It probably did about 15 shots, something like that. Because it's very difficult when a girl's on point and you're saying, look, do this or do that. Move your right arm back, because I wanted a right arm in the shot, although it's in shadow, that's fine. But it just looked odd when it was just straight down, so you could only see one arm. And then she just stretched the body, and then when I came to process it, I just desaturated it slightly, but just to maintain that body shape. And the sunlight was brilliant. It just worked for us. You know, it was very, very strong and powerful, but it just gives a sheen to a body.
Do you like to skin smooth at all in post-production, or are you pretty much no retouching? How does it work for you?
Well, Matt, let's go back to layers. Last year I learned layers. Smooth. In Lightroom, what I do is I just put a little bit of, I think it's smooth and texture or something like that. I just smooth the skin out slightly. And if I have to, now what I'll do is I'll put a little bit more definition into the background. I'll make that a little bit grittier, but I'll diffuse it slightly. Sometimes I can't always use 2.8, or if I use 2.8 on the 16 to 55, I don't get that separation as you would do with 100 to 400. So that's when I've got to use a little bit of my savviness and try and get that background diffused a little bit. But as for skin smoothing, I'm not big into, you know, making things really, really smooth. I see it as I see it. If I'm happy with it, I'm happy with it. Because I think a lot of the time you'll get skin and it's that smooth, you know, people know that people don't have skin like that. But sometimes it lends to a photograph. You know, I've seen images where people have smooth skin and it looks absolutely fine, but it's in context with the rest of the image. Whereas I don't tend to smooth skin, and that's purely because I never have. You know, whether that's right or wrong, this works for me, and that's how it is. Now, if somebody came over and said, right, I'll sit with you for 5 hours and we'll learn how to use a tool to smooth skin, I'd probably say, well, bloody hell, that's the best thing I've ever learned, you know. So, but as a general rule, I just go with the images that I've got.
Very good. Before we move on to the other questions, we've got to say that basically you're actively generating money for cancer researchers, isn't it? So if there's any camera clubs out there or anybody wants to do any talks with you, etc., to get in touch, because all of the money that you make through it is you're donating. That's correct, isn't it?
So far, I've donated around about 50,000. So all Amazing. My photography, all I do is I just donate the money. I pay for my own model. I'm lucky enough to have a full-time job that I've been successful in. So all my models and things like that I pay for. And then the only revenue that I've got, I've only ever sold 2 prints. But when I retire in 19 days' time, I hope to start on a couple of books. Just black and white books, but the revenue that 100% of the money that I make from those books will go to cancer research. But Brilliant. the only way that I get revenue at the moment for cancer research is by going to photographic societies or clubs or whatever that will listen to me for an hour and a half, look at 120 images. We have a bit of a laugh and a chat. And an enjoyment, you know, questions from the floor, and it's generally a fun. I don't think anybody that's been to one of my talks has not enjoyed it, even for my worst jokes, you know. So yeah, but that's the only way. So if you have got viewers on here that are within, you know, camera clubs, I do Zoom calls. I've done one recently in Aberdeen. I know that I'm going down to Solihull later on in the year, and then Harrogate. So, but yeah, just get in touch.
But they can get in touch via your Purple Port or from your website anyway, isn't it, Richard Egan?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So just go from there with it. Let's. As far as censorship's concerned, I've got a few more questions to go, if you're okay.
Yeah.
Do you get frustrated with censorship, or do you not get censored at all and things? So to do with fine art and everything else with it, you know, Instagram or even within the clubs, you mentioned that. Do you get fed up with
it? No, I tolerate it. And sometimes I detune a lot of the stuff that I've got. This is Instagram. Yeah, that's fine. I'll take nipples out and things like that. I'll always ask my model what I can or cannot do. There's certain models I'm allowed to show in different areas or whatever. That's not a problem. Sometimes I tag and don't tag. But it was funny this week that I had a memory come up on my Facebook feed. And it was from an image that I'd taken 2 years ago. And it came up as a memory. And I thought, oh, that was a really nice image. It had been masked out in places. I put it onto Facebook saying, you know, this was great to work with this model on this occasion, whatever. And then I got a ping from Facebook saying, this has gone against our requirements for so-and-so. And then I moved down to the next bit and I see somebody on Facebook that's breastfeeding a child. And that's all right. So let's not go there, because it can trigger me quite often to think that I've seen stuff on Instagram that isn't there, and to me, I consider my, you know, art new to be art, you know, mainly about a building with a person in it, showing contrasting light. and that's how I view it. I don't view it any other way than that. So.
How do you navigate it with even your own camera club? Because you were saying at the beginning that even your own camera club doesn't like you showing or exhibiting nudes and things.
I can't talk too much of that at the moment because they're just going through a process at the moment. In fact, they're probably in a meeting at this moment in time. There's been a few people, some of my images were entered into an exhibition open to the public. And then I think some of the committee members didn't like the art nude part of it. So they don't want it to be exhibited again. But that's my freedom of what I put into a club annual exhibition, you know.
Yeah.
That's it's a bit like me saying I don't want to see any more architecture because I only like green open fields. It's very difficult.
How do you see the genre evolving in the next decade? Do you think restrictions in fine art, nude specifically, are going to get tighter, or they're going to become freer?
I think they'll get tighter, and I think they'll get tighter for, you know, now we've got Instagram, we've got, you know, Facebook, we've got all these things, and it's you're going down an avenue. Oh, you can't do that because you're going to upset X, Y, and Z. We can't show that. We can't show that. Yeah, if you go back, you know, many years to some of Michelangelo's and you know, a lot of the art then that's new, it's fantastic, you know, and that's still about. And what's the difference between that and somebody taking a photograph of a lady half naked, draped in a white muslin, you know, in a beautiful building? It's, to me, it's just another art of, you know, it's just another arm of art, really. So, but will be dictated to by other people, which is unfortunate. Especially when there's so many good artists out there that are probably unknown, that can't show their work freely.
It's all in the eye of the beholder at the end of the day, and the society Absolutely. And the committees of the world, as it were. Richard, thank you so much for kind of sharing some time with us. It's been absolutely brilliant. Some beautiful photographs. Remember, you can kind of check out Richard's Instagram page, his Purple Port, and obviously his website as well. If you fancy kind of having Richard to do a talk for you at your camera club or whatever, then you'll know that you'll be actually raising funds for cancer research while you're doing that as well. So that'd be really good. Richard, just one final question, really. Somebody, if they're just dipping their toe into the world of fine art nude photography for the first time, what's the simplest advice that you can give to them, but the most effective advice?
Use a professional model. That would be my first thing. You will learn more. You know, if you walked into a studio or a location with a professional model, you will learn so much. They're just in a different stratosphere, you know. And if you go on to, I mean, what I do is I generally go on to Purple Port. I look to see what FPIs are going through. I look to see the sort of style of image that I like that has got an FPI, and then I'll click on that photographer, click on the model, have a look at the model's profile, read a few references that have gone from, and I'll go for there. But I've probably only photographed 20, 25 art nude models. I think once you find an art nude model that you like working with, I've probably got 5 that I work with. Not as regular as I should do, but that would be my massive first tip. It's not about the equipment, it's about the model. You get a good model and she'll make you an image just by standing there, and all you'll have to do is point your camera, and then you can work on that.
That's your starting point. Thank you, everybody. Have an absolutely brilliant night. Thanks for joining us. I'm back in a few weeks' time for another talk photography. If you haven't realized already, we couldn't do Photoshop school today because I had a day off. It's tomorrow. So join me at 1 o'clock tomorrow for Photoshop school, and I'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much, Richard. Have a great night. Now. Take care, everybody. Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.